What's up, y'all? My name is Kenyatta. This video will be all about emergency funds. I'll go over what an emergency fund is, the benefits of having one, and how you can go about starting yours. I will also go over the best place to keep your emergency fund to get the most out of your money. Before I get started, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, let's get started. An emergency fund is keeping cash on the side to cover 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses. Some people are more conservative and might save up to maybe a year's worth of expenses. I wouldn't keep that much saved, mostly due to the opportunity costs. Opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives, but I'll go into that later in the video. So having an emergency fund is great because it will help keep you afloat if you find yourself in a storm. If you lose your income or experience some sort of emergency, you will have a pot of money to pull from. Best case scenario, you'll be able to cover everything using that fund without having to borrow from people or without having to use high interest debt like a credit card or a payday loan. Worst case scenario, it's just a start to help handle your problem, but that's better than having nothing and just being out here bold. Emergency funds also come in handy when unexpected expenses pop up. Y'all know how life works. If it's not one thing, it's another. This month, your car alternator died and you need to replace it. Last month, you needed a major repair on the furnace in your home. I could go on and on, but you get the point. I personally get the most use out of my emergency fund from things like this. So apparently I'm unlucky and I've popped like 4 tires on my car over the past 3 to 4 years. And having a flat tire is stressful enough, but I've never had to stress about how I was gonna pay for it. I just pulled the money from my emergency fund, handled my business, and then over the next couple weeks or maybe months, I would just adjust my budget to add back into my emergency fund to get it back to the level I like it to be at. So if you want to create an emergency fund, the first place you should start is your budget. If you don't have a budget and you would like a little help creating one, go watch my video on budgeting. I included a free template that you can use to create your own budget. I will link to it up in the atmosphere somewhere and also down in the description so you can check it out. Looking at your budget, you'll be able to add up all your necessary monthly expenses and base your emergency fund on that number. Personally, I like to base my emergency monthly budget around my bare bones necessities. So for example, if I lost my job, I would request to have my student loans placed into forbearance, meaning I would not have to make those monthly payments during that period. So I would not include student loan payments in my monthly emergency budget. I would also cancel all of my subscriptions, gym memberships, and streaming services, so none of that will be included in my monthly emergency budget either. Cutting out all the fluff will bring down your emergency budget, and it might actually surprise you how little you could live off of if you needed to. So after adding up all your necessary expenses from your budget, go ahead and multiply that by however many months you want your emergency fund to be. I would recommend that a 3-month emergency fund be the bare minimum. I personally keep 6 months of expenses around because I'm a more cautious person and it makes me feel more comfortable to have a bigger safety net. But it's really all up to you to determine what you're comfortable with. Keep in mind the opportunity cost of holding your money in an emergency savings. Your money will essentially be sitting on the sidelines and it will miss out on all the opportunities to make you more money. This is the reason why I only save what I need to feel comfortable and then I invest everything else. On average, inflation is going to decrease your money by 1 to 2% per year. For this reason, you should not keep large sums of cash in a checking account or saved physically like that old school way of keeping money in a shoebox. You'll get the most bang for your buck by investing in appreciating assets like real estate or stocks. Investing in an S&P 500 index fund will return about 7% per year on average, and that's great. The problem is your money won't be liquid if it's tied up in these types of assets. Generally, when you invest in the stock market, you should be thinking long term with at least a 3-year outlook. So if it's possible that you might need the money in the short term, you should not put it in the stock market. Imagine you had put your $5,000 emergency fund in an S&P 500 index and you had an emergency where you actually needed to use it. Now imagine if that emergency occurred on March 23rd, 2020, when the S&P had fallen 34% from its peak. If you really needed the money, you would have no choice but to sell your stocks for a 34% loss and pull out $3,300 instead of the original $5K you put in. Now, obviously that's the worst case scenario and nobody could have predicted the world would change the way it did last year, but that's kind of the point, right? We can't predict what's going to happen in the market. And if you're anything like me, when it rains, it pours. So it will be just my luck that I would need to pull this money out when the market had a big downturn. So basically, I'm just trying to let you know not to set yourself up for failure by putting your emergency fund in the market. Okay, so if you shouldn't keep your money in a checking account and the stock market is also not a good place for it, then what should you do? You should keep your emergency fund in a high yield savings account. Typical savings accounts have an APY or an annual percentage yield of about 0.04% per year on average, but you can get about 12 times more than that with the best high yield savings rates. So pre-pandemic, before interest rates dropped to basically zero, you can find high yield savings accounts offering 2.5% or maybe even more. Due to the Federal Reserve dropping national interest rates, the best high yield accounts are only offering about 0.5% these days, but that's still much better than a typical checking account and a typical savings account, and it's also much safer than the stock market. Plus, when interest rates eventually go back to normal, you will earn more. The American Express Personal Savings High Yield Savings Account has a competitive APY of 0.5%, but what really sets it apart is the fact that it has no account minimums and no monthly fees. Markets by Goldman Sachs also offers a high yield savings account with a 0.5% interest rate, no minimum deposits, and no monthly fees. There are plenty of high yield savings accounts out there that you can find and research, but these are just two that I like due to their lack of fees and lack of minimums. I will leave links to them down in the description if you want to take a look and see what they offer. All right, that's all I got for this video. So let me know down in the comments if you already have an emergency fund or if you're thinking about starting one. Thanks for watching, y'all. Peace.